Just when you think that things cannot get any more Orwellian or any more dystopian, stories like these come along. So, yesterday, Reuters reported that the European Central Bank should consider issuing a public digital currency, or a crypto euro. An European Union draft document said, after plans by Facebook to introduce a private one, which is their Libra, met with a hostile response from global regulators. So, European Union technocrats are alarmed at the Libra. Not that they like the large technology companies either. I mean, they have enormous amounts of regulation and stuff like that on them. I don't like the big technology companies. They're censoring me. But still, these government bureaucrats, these central planners, it's all part of the stagflate and tax and lie narrative. This cashless society, more stagflation, more shrinkflation, and then more taxes. An Austrian central banker just said in a speech today, talking about how negative interest rates more in Europe are not going to fix things. They can't do it. It can't solve anything else. That it has to be quote unquote fiscal policy, which normally just means higher taxes. Okay, let me continue with this Reuters story. The social media firm, hostile response from a global regulator. Social media firm Facebook said in June it planned to launch Libra next year, digital currency next year, but France and Germany said in September it posed risks to the financial sector and backed developing a public alternative. The draft European Union text seen by Reuters on Tuesday also urges the European Union bloc to develop a common approach to cryptocurrencies, including possibly banning projects deemed too high risk. In its current form, the document, which could be adopted by European Union finance ministers next month, would escalate an EU regulatory campaign against cryptocurrencies, against private cryptocurrencies, which have so far been only partly regulated in some EU states. Quote, the ECB and other EU central banks could usefully explore the opportunities as well as challenges of issuing central bank digital currencies, including by considering concrete steps to this effect, said the draft prepared by the Finnish EU presidency and subject to possible amendments. Digital currencies like Libra, also known as stablecoins, are usually backed by traditional money and other securities, while crypto coins like Bitcoin are not. Both are cryptocurrencies. The draft text could be discussed by the EU finance ministers as early as this Friday, according to the agenda for that meeting, with a view to its adoption at their next gathering on December 5th. So stepped up thinking. ECB board member said in September the bank should step up in its thinking on public digital currency. Also, and I'll continue with this article in a second, but there's another article I found while I was looking for that cool photo that you guys are seeing. The Association of German Banks 6 days ago, there's an article. They are now in favor of a government-issued euro cryptocurrency. I'll talk about that in a couple of minutes. Welcome to Dystopia, right? And the main reason is taxes. There are a ton of reports out in the last 10 years about the European Union economy, how a lot of people work off the books for cash and do not pay taxes. They avoid that value-added tax. So if you're an American and you're a tourist and you go to the European Union countries, there's a large VAT tax, value-added tax. A lot of people want to avoid the VAT tax. A lot of people don't want to pay that tax. A lot of people want to work off the books for cash. I've seen research reports estimated that the European Union, there's as much as 40% of the total economy works off the books for cash. That's how many people don't want to pay taxes. And the European Union, this is why it is so dangerous with blockchain technology, because technology, in my opinion, is neither good nor bad. It's who uses the technology. And there's countless examples of this throughout history of a technology, and you don't think it's bad, and all of a sudden it's hijacked by like a warlord or a government for evil, greedy, nefarious purposes. You know, technology that someone who invented it with no intention of killing someone could all of a sudden start killing, thousands or millions of people, or impoverishing them even further. Eric Townsend, if you want to learn more about this, Eric Townsend, who has the Macro Voices podcast, a lot of people are not aware of this. I've interviewed him in the past on my channel. Before he did the Macro Voices podcast and was managing his own money, he was actually a very successful computer programmer and software entrepreneur. So he has a background in computer programming and software engineering. He built a successful technology company. It made money. He cashed out before the tech bubble of 1999 and 2000 crashed, and he had a very high net worth. And unfortunately, he talks about this on his podcast. There's an entire section on his website where he goes into greater detail about this. He gave his money to the money managers at Goldman Sachs, and they promptly stole, in a short amount of time, in fees and other bad investments, they stole, I think, more than half of it. So he had an enormous nest egg, and a lot of it was taken from him. But his background is in computer programming. So he talks in this book, which is available for audiobook on his website for, I think, $19.95. I see it right here. He also has a paperback and Kindle version for... The Kindle version is $10 if you want it. His new book that came out last year is, or either last year or at the beginning of this year, I can't remember. I mean, I've interviewed him a number of times. It's Beyond Blockchain, The Death of the Dollar and the Rise of Digital Currency. He talks in there about FedCoin, how governments will hijack blockchain technology, ban or tax the private cryptocurrencies, making people criminals, and then take blockchain technology, and blockchain is supposed to be decentralized, but governments want to make it centralized, and they want to ban cash, and they want to either track, tax, and trace every transaction. They want to go after the people who are not paying taxes, who are underreporting their income or getting paid in all cash. This is also easy then for governments to add a value-added tax or a national sales tax on to enforce it with a if you have a cashless society and cash is banned. So this is extremely in fact, this is so Orwellian, I don't know if Orwell, if he were alive today, would actually believe this. Okay, back to the article. ECU board member Benoit Couer said in September the bank should step up its thinking on a public digital currency, and ECB officials said that in its most ambitious version, the project could allow consumers to use electronic cash, which would be directly deposited at the ECB without need for bank accounts, financial intermediaries, or clearing counterparties, which would make it easier for governments to tax every single transaction. Or if you're a rabble-rouser like me and you like criticizing all these different governments, they can either ruin my life or make my life even more difficult than it already is by shutting down my bank accounts, blocking credit cards, all those types of fun things that people who speak out in governments that don't have free speech. With social credit scores. So once you go full cashless and you have government cryptocurrency, a lot easier than you implement a social credit score. And a lot of the champagne socialists in Europe, and there was actually a research report out by a group of socialists saying that there's $1 trillion per year in tax dodging in the European Union. It came out, there's a research report on this that came out in February of this year. I'll attach a link to it and I may read some of the article. But they're saying that the socialists in the European Union, there's a part of the Socialist Party here, a group of I'll read the exact name, the Group of Progressive Alliance of Socialists and Democrats in the European Parliament issued a report in February 2019, estimating with research that 1 trillion euros, not $1 trillion, 1 trillion euros per year in tax revenues is not paid to the governments by these evil, greedy tax dodgers. And I'm being sarcastic here, okay? I'm not in favor of paying more taxes. You guys know this. I'm in favor of smaller government, less taxes. Okay, so back to this article. An ECB official said that in its most ambitious version, the project could allow consumers to use electronic cash, which would be directly deposited at the ECB without need for bank accounts, financial intermediaries, or clearing counterparties. They're all needed now to process digital payments, but might no longer be needed if the ECB or European Central Bank took over their functions, slashing transaction costs. But that raises technical challenges, which the People's Bank of China seems to have solved, and the European Union may be copying. I'm sure they're talking about this, because remember, when Xi went to Davos a couple years ago, he got an astounding standing ovation and round of applause for a lot of the stuff he was doing, and a lot of it was by people in the European Union. A lot of these rich champagne socialists in Europe. But that raises technical challenges, and opposition from banks is likely. Actually, the opposition from banks, apparently doesn't seem to be as likely anymore. Because 6 days ago, I have this website article open from Ledger Insights. Association of German Banks wants a digital euro. 6 days ago, this article is by Miranda Wood. Yesterday, which was 7 days ago, the Association of German Banks published its position on digital currency, saying a crypto-based digital euro should be launched. Wow. That's amazing how quickly they've changed their minds. The entity is considered the voice of private banks in the country and now endorses a blockchain-based or inspired currency. Quote, the German private banks rate programmable digital money as an innovation with great potential, and also loss of freedom, more taxes, and a bunch of other bad things, nefarious things, that can be a key component in the next stage of the evolution of digitalization. The statement reads, the group includes banks such as Commerzbank, of course, Deutsche Bank, FinLeap, and Unicredit Bank among its 200-plus members. Citing the G7 report on stablecoins, the association outlines how digital money is a requirement for automated Internet of Things payments, customer convenience, and cost, and to remain competitive. They don't list any of the downsides. The banks believe that they and other European entities have the means to build and support the use of a digital euro backed by the government, but they need institutional backing first. We expect lawmakers and regulators to lay the necessary foundations for digital innovation, especially in the banking sector, stated the association. Then the German private banks will play their part in establishing a sustainable, innovative monetary system. Blah, 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 BS. BS, BS, blah, blah, BS, blah, blah, BS, blah, blah. For this purpose, a programmable account, and I'm being very sarcastic here because, I mean, this stuff is so bad, so sad, so frustrating, so angering. But the people who love technology are going to embrace it. But a lot of the people love technology that much who believe in it as a religion are not libertarian. They don't care if government knows everything about them and all this. They don't care about any of that. Okay, for this purpose, but I digress. For this purpose, a programmable account and crypto-based digital euro should be created, and its interoperability with book money ensured. The entity has a detailed plan with considerations of legal compliance, issuance, custody, and competition laws. So it sounds like things are pretty far along, except for some of the technological aspects, which China, the People's Bank of China, seems to have worked out. China claims the tech is done. China claims, the articles I've read, and I've been covering this story since August, before a lot of others, that China could launch as soon as next week, November 11th, which is one of China's biggest shopping days. It's called Singles Day. So could China's government cryptocurrency could be launched as early as November 11th. We'll see. Welcome to Dystopia. Okay, let me go back to this. I'm going between articles here because some of the stuff in each article, it connects. So opposition, this article from Reuters is talking, that was yesterday, is talking about opposition from banks. And I just told you the opposition from European Union banks doesn't seem to be there anymore, especially German banks. And we know how much control Germany has at the European Union. Until Facebook launched its project in June, regulators had largely ignored stablecoins because of their tiny size. The largest tether is far smaller than Bitcoin, but Libra's potentially huge reach could be used by billions of Facebook users, has spooked regulators. As part of a global push against Libra, the G7 group of wealthy nations said last month that stablecoins should not be allowed to launch until international risks they were posed were addressed. Under regulatory pressure, Libra has lost a quarter of its original members, including payments from Visa and MasterCard. The EU document reiterates the G7 concerns over the risks that private currencies pose. Yeah, meaning that people can not pay all the taxes from the stagflate and tax and lie, all the extra taxes that are going to be levied on in addition to devalued fiat currencies. Or devalued digital fiat, whatever. Sounds like more of these governments are going to be wanting to copy the China model. God forbid they try to integrate a full social credit score system like what's going on in China. I hear from my top source in mainland China who attended some of these political rallies in the last couple months that China is going to get even more stringent, even worse, even more Orwellian, even more draconian, even more totalitarian with their social credit score system starting on January 1st, 2020. Again, welcome to Dystopia. Let's hope that this does not come to the US, although I know there are a bunch of people that are making 6 or 7 figures inside these big technology companies, at the Googles, the Facebooks, the Pinterests, the Twitters, who want this applied to people here in the United States like me. They want free speech gone. They don't want people like me, to cover stories like this and earn a living. Okay, back to the article. Taxation, cyber functioning. I did okay. EU document reiterates G7 concerns over the risks that private currencies pose, citing money laundering, consumer protection, functioning of payment systems, taxation, and cybersecurity. But in recommending an outright ban on risky projects and a move toward a public digital currency, it goes further. Quote, at the very least, we need a robust regulatory framework to deal with virtual currencies, said Markus Ferber, a German conservative who leads on financial matters, the largest EU Parliament grouping. The executive EU Commission has been way too complacent on the issue so far. With the threat of Libra on the horizon, it is time for action now. Time to take that technology, like blockchain technology, hijack it, and for governments to gain more control over people, to increase taxes, and eventually probably go to full cashless society, where you do not have a choice if you want to use cash or some other form of payment. You want to see the links to the German Association one? Here, let me... So I found the German Banking Association article while I was doing more research. So these two things together, it was thought that the banks were going to be against this government cryptocurrency, the government euro. Government crypto euro, and now the German banks seem on board. For our European listeners, this is not good. I feel very bad. All these things seem to be happening ahead of time in the European Union compared to the US, with how much the social problems, with the violence and protests, lack of free speech is eliminated in many European countries. There is no free speech anymore, especially like in the UK and elsewhere. I think they don't even let people into the country if your social media profiles are bad. So they turn you around at Heathrow. So if you're an American and your social media is bad, I think they can deny you entry into the country at Heathrow now, into the UK. And the exact opposite of what should be done policy-wise to fix these economies is being done. The exact opposite. I've spoken to a lot of people in the UK and European listeners over the years, and there is so little entrepreneurship and starting of small businesses and growing of small businesses in the European Union. It's very difficult compared to the United States. So difficult, especially from what I hear the United Kingdom. There's so many taxes, rules, and regulations. And that's where a lot of the jobs are created. A lot of the jobs are created from an entrepreneur or a group of people taking a risk, taking a calculated risk, starting a business, growing it. That's where a lot of the real job creation is. Corporations, people think that corporations create a lot of jobs. Normally the stock prices on these corporations go up when they fire a bunch of people. Think about that. Yeah, I've heard the amount of rules, regulations, taxes, red tape, corruption. I've heard stories from people in Italy how there's 5 different government regulatory agencies needed in Italy just to get a credit card machine. That, like, there's bribery and corruption and a bunch of other stuff. It's ridiculously hard. And ideally, that's what's needed to fix the economy, is more entrepreneurship, is more small business, is people taking calculated risks and growing the economy. But, these central planners, these Keynesians, these central planners, these socialists, these Marxists, who are running these governments and bureaucrats, they don't want any of this stuff. Okay, so this research report, I said I would talk about this research report. It came out in February of this year, 2019, and it's from the group of Progressive Alliance of Socialists and Democrats in the European Parliament. And unfortunately, there's too many. There's a lot of socialists and democratic socialists in the European Parliament. And they found that up to I've seen different research estimates of this. I've seen hundreds of billions of euros per year. I've seen up to, this research report says 1 trillion euros per year are lost in tax revenue that is dodged. And there's articles, I found an article saying that the European Union had research back to 2013 that there was 1 trillion euros in tax revenues. I have the article here. In tax revenues that were unpaid. And that I've seen other research reports. There's a Financial Times Alpha article on this also from February of 2019. And they cited a number of other research reports about tax evasion and lack of people, and how a lot of people in the European Union do not pay taxes. That there's some estimates from different research reports that 40% of the entire economy might not be paying taxes, could be underground, all cash. They would call it like black market or dark money. I would call it, people hustling, trying to survive, not paying all the whatever the value added tax is really high there. Andrew Yang here in the United States, who won't win the presidential election, won't win the Democrat nomination, but that doesn't mean Elizabeth Warren won't copy his policies. Andrew Yang, for his $1,000 per month universal basic income that he's planning on giving out, he's not going to win the nomination, not going to win the election, but Elizabeth Warren may copy him. She's looking like the front runner right now. That 17%, Andrew Yang, to pay for his $1,000 per month universal basic income, 17% value added tax. Please tell me how that will not hurt the economy. That will not collapse the economy even further. So that $1,000 per month, tell your friends who are liking that $1,000 per month, if you're paying a 17% value added tax, it's not really $1,000 per month. Plus the currency is going to be devalued. Plus if you live in states like California and others, they're going to either increase existing taxes or layer on new taxes. This fits perfectly. Along with cashless society, government cryptocurrency, this fits perfectly in my stagflate and tax and lie thesis. I don't cover junior miners like that. If you want to listen to comments on Wallbridge mining, go and listen to the Sprott Money podcast where Eric Sprott gives updates. I believe he's a large investor in that. That's free on the Sprott Money. They have the weekly metals markets wrap up. That's where Eric Sprott gives his only public comments now, once a week. I don't cover juniors like that. They're just too risky. Rob says none of these coins can handle the 500 to 1 million transactions per second required to replace money. Maybe Tendermint derivatives or hash graphs, but a year or two is a delusional fantasy. Well, I think, Rob, I agree with you on the technical stuff. You would know that better than I would, but I would say that these governments, this shows how desperate these governments are for more tax revenues. How desperate. So they can't devalue their currencies fast enough. They're not getting enough inflation. The central bankers talk about this all the time. Got to fight deflation. Not getting enough inflation. We're not hitting our inflation. They're not hitting their bogus inflation targets with bogus inflation data, with bogus CPIs. They're not hitting it fast enough. Jim Rickards has talked about that they'll raise the inflation target of 4% per year. Because right now it's at 2%, and here in the United States, and the government is claiming that they're not hitting that. Meanwhile, we see tons of evidence of shrinkflation, stagflation. It's basically everywhere in anyone's daily shopping. Consumer staples, food items. The examples are ridiculous. I just found another one today. I was helping my dad out running some errands. My dad likes buying a lot of paprika for blackening chicken and fish. And he went to 2 different stores, and it was the same company, McCormick Spices, 2 different size packages. One was the old paprika that was 11 ounces, and the other one was the new one. They put people say, oh, it's different packaging. You don't understand the retail and food industry. The retail and food industry comes up with new ways to to rebrand, to market to people. And normally, unfortunately, nowadays, and it's probably been this way for a while, but it just keeps getting worse, marketing means lying. The main buzzword now for marketing and lying is premium. They put the word premium on products, on food items, consumer items, way overused. Everything's premium. That's like saying that everyone's a good driver, or that everyone has a smart kid. Everyone cannot be a good driver. It's probably the Pareto principle. Everyone cannot be a good driver when there's so many car accidents. You can't have 70 or 80% of the total adult population be good drivers. That's the truth. No one wants to hear that, though. Most likely, it's the Pareto principle for distribution. Might even be worse than that. The 80-20. So most likely, 20% of the population is a good driver. Probably less. Not 80. Okay, well, that's it. I'm going to attach links to all these articles. I feel really bad for my listeners in the United Kingdom and the European Union. Looks like things are going to get a lot worse, because now not only are the European Union bureaucrats and technocrats wanting to accelerate this and move this up, and it's about less freedom, it's about more control for government, it's about tax revenues. This is a bad guinea pig experiment, because there's a lot of technical problems that can go wrong on this. Okay, well, I want to thank everyone for listening to this, and thank you very much to my over 180 Patreon account contributors who are sticking with me here while YouTube censors the crap out of this channel. And it adds 100 new subscribers now in 2 months, despite me making unique content every day covering topics like this that very few others will touch. Oh, the other thing is now the German banks are on board that I wanted to bring. Yeah, so not only do you have these technocrats, these European bureaucrats and unelected officials in Brussels wanting to push this stuff, but you also have the German banks on board, where it seemed that in the past the other banks were not as on board. So I do feel bad for my European Union listener. You're going to have to be more entrepreneurial. You're going to have to hustle. Looks like they're going to figure out new ways to screw people over. And this is why I criticize government so much. This is why I criticize all governments. That's why I'm not on the nice list for a lot of governments right now. Again, thank you to my Patreon account contributors. Hopefully I will be over 200 by the end of this year. Things are looking good, although I think 7 or 8 people canceled recently, but oh well, I know times are tough. Thank you very much to my dozen or so monthly PayPal account contributors. It's much appreciated. And also thank you very much to people who throw me a tip once in a while. It all adds up. Then I could focus on the content and combining the analysis of multiple stories here. You just don't get this anywhere else. Where I'll stop reading one article and say, hey, this article writer is totally freaking wrong, and go to the next article and say, well, this article disproves what from a week ago just says, that the article from a week ago disproves what this article that came out yesterday just said. You don't see a lot of journalists or investigative reporters or analysts or any researchers doing stuff like this. Okay, that's it for right now, and I will work on other... Well, that was my computer. Hopefully, that was just a... Okay, anyways, thank you very much, and I will work on other great and unique content for the rest of the week.